Hello everybody, welcome back to the World AI Only Deathmatch series. This is part 14. In the last episode, quite a bit has changed here in West Africa. Of course, every time we actually open up this game, we zoom in on Zanzibar for some reason. So, not too far away from Zanzibar itself, we have Venezuelan West Africa. And this came into being by basically having Venezuela put Oran to the torch. They have captured French West Africa and settled their second city on the continent, Ciudad Bolivar. They are outside of Toulouse, which they hope to take for themselves. So we see some Venezuelan ambitions in West Africa. Also, on the last episode, England has been annihilated. As you guys can see, London has been conquered by the Persians, where York has also been conquered by the Shoshone. So the Shoshone have renewed a new interest in the European theater. They have access to European territory now, as does Persia. As in the last episode, Persia has also taken quite a bit of cities. They've taken 4 cities. They are Berlin, Kopeng, Kiev, and Krasnodar. This episode will be very interesting because the Soviet Union will not only have to fight the Persian invader, which is more technologically advanced than themselves, but they will also have to fight a civil war. As one of my users has, or one of my subscribers has stated, I believe Chris He, these are white Russian units, kind of from the revolutionary period in Soviet history. These guys are opposed to the autocratic regime of Stalin, so they're trying to rise up and restore, I guess, the monarchy, Tsar Nicholas, even though it's 2036 and he's dead, but we don't really care. Also, in the last episode, we have some Persian expansion into Siberia over here with Gabi. And going to the south, not a whole lot has changed. We are still seeing some development over here in Australia. Nothing really new. Of course, we've got a Persian trireme, which is quite a bit interesting to see in this day and age. In South America, we see expansion on the part of Venezuela. They are expanding to the west of the Andean range. They have a few cities here in modern-day Chile, here in the Atacama Desert Range. Of course, they control the entire continent with the exception of Soviet Ecuador, and North America still very much in the grasp of the Shoshone. The Shoshone now have happiness, so we see some settlers here, kind of in modern-day Labrador. Not a lot going on over here. And we also see some Venezuelan settlers potentially settling or heading towards Greenland, which is anything but green, but it has access to lots and lots of oil and iron and copper. And perhaps they're headed to Iceland, which also has the strategic resource of uranium. So, without further ado, let us go ahead and continue where we left off. To refresh y'all's memory, we are going to go ahead and go to a quick diplomatic overview to see who is at war with each other. Of course, Bismarck, Germany, is at war with pretty much the entire world. They only have one territory. Refresh y'all's mind, it's over here in Essen. And Denmark is still in the game. I know a few of you guys might be wondering. They're still over here. They still have crossbowmen. And yeah, it's a pretty sad state of affairs they're in. Let's go ahead and go back to the market overview. France is at war with England and Venezuela. Very interesting. Persia is at war with England, the Soviet Union, and of course Germany. We're not really mentioning them, so we'll see what they do in this episode. Shoshone is still at war with England. Korea is at war with England. Speaking of Korea, they have a massive fleet heading somewhere that we could see outside of here, outside of Kilwa. They've got some ships inside of their, I guess, sea territory. So let's go ahead and end the turn and see exactly what happens. Of course, England is still at war with Persia and the Shoshone, so the Persians might actually take a break from destroying the Soviet Union and work their way up to the north to take out Ribe, which is modern-day St. Petersburg. So without further ado, let's go ahead and continue where we left off. I'm going to kind of leave my camera over here in a relatively moderate view of Eurasia. Of course, we have a good view of Leningrad in case it falls to Persia. Perhaps the Soviet Union will be able to push back into its former territory. We will see. Their unique ability, the Iron Curtain, is damaging Persian units incessantly as they rest within their territory. England making peace with Korea. Big news in world events. Let's see what the Soviet Union is able to do here against Persia, perhaps dropping more nukes. I don't really know. Just stagnation outside of Leningrad. I believe the Soviet Union might be able to hold on to Leningrad if they are careful. And I say this because they have a massive amount of troops within the territory, including outside of Moscow itself, as we have some of these anti-Bolshevik, barbarian anti-tank guns. We're not really quite sure what they're going to end up doing. But over here in Siberia, we have some more action outside of Munich. The Persian Empire seeks to spread itself into Siberia. Perhaps they will take Munich, but they will have to deal with the massive air, based forces outside of Sverdlovsk in Siberia. Let's see if there's any more nuclear weapons on any side of the border here, because it would certainly help Stalin if there were. But at this point, it doesn't look like there is any source of nuclear weapons. Of course, Persia is technologically advanced. They have stealth bombers and jet fighters as compared to the bombers and fighters that the Soviet Union is fielding. Let's go over here to West Africa, where Toulouse will probably fall as soon as we get some Venezuelan Great War infantry into the territory. Let's go ahead and end the turn once again, keeping our eye over Leningrad and Munich, just in case if anything happens this turn. Persia in a very interesting position here. We will see what they use with their units and where they decide to strike. Still continued assault on Munich. And with their technological superiority, Persia should have no problem knocking down these cities, even if they have 101 defense or 112 defense. Of course, cities with more than 100 defense are notoriously tough cookies to crack. But take a look. Venezuela has just conquered all of French West Africa. They now have control over this specific part of Africa, and they kind of have an interesting corridor and zone of control that spreads across the Atlantic Ocean now, which is pretty cool, actually. Venezuela definitely an underdog civilization at this point. Perhaps they will rise up where the Soviet Union is falling, and I say that the Soviet Union might be able to make peace with Persia on, relatively harsh terms. We don't know yet. We'll keep our eyes open. Korea still very much a hermit kingdom. We don't see a lot of expansion from them. In fact, they haven't expanded in thousands of years. Going to the east, America still able to field a very large military, despite the fact that they only have a 13-pop capital, and that is that. Let's go to the east, where the Shoshone are about to found a city in Labrador. And to the north, where we have a Venezuelan city in Greenland, presumably to take advantage of the oil. We have knights over here in Greenland, very anachronistic with the time period of 2037 AD, but the Venezuelans are a bit behind on the time. Hopefully they will catch up now that they border a more technologically advanced nation. But honestly, it seems like Kilwa is massing troops on the border between Venezuela. We will see if they decide to break the peace with Venezuela and grab all of these colonies themselves. But that's besides the point. Let's go ahead and continue where we left off here in Europe. And outside of Hamburg, it seems like next turn this city will fall to the Persian troops outside of the city. And Leningrad looks like it's been nuked once again. Let's take a look down here at Persepolis, regrowing very fast here after the fallout has decimated most of their city and countryside. So let's go ahead and end our turn right around here. Kind of get a good look on all three of the most at-risk Soviet cities, Leningrad, Munich, and Hamburg. Oops, let's go ahead and do this, just like that. My guess is that Persia will take Hamburg this turn. Potentially they might be able to take Munich as well, we will see. Definitely the war is not going in the Soviets' favor. We have just seen Hamburg being taken by the Persian Empire, which will now unite the Persian Empire across the European theater. Of course, now they are connected by a land bridge spanning across Anatolia through modern-day, Istanbul, Turkey, into kind of like the Northern Balkans slash, I guess this would be Bulgaria and Romania, and Moldova is also over here somewhere. And across the English Channel, they have access to London. So Persia is in every aspect of the word an intercontinental power. Team Persia is just really ahead of everybody at this point. They have so many freaking cities just dotted across the globe, and they just have a reserve navy. I mean, look at this. This is just a reserve navy. They're not even using this navy for anything, just more of like a, I guess, a pissing contest to show that the other civilizations are no match for the Persian naval might. We do have some fighting still outside of Western Africa, outside of the former French colony of Toulouse. We, of course, have French artillery, anti-aircraft guns, and great war infantry on the way to try to take back the former French colony. Going back into Europe, let's go ahead and pan over the Soviet Union, where it looks to be like Leningrad is going to fight for its very survival next turn, and Munich will also be fighting for its survival as well. If Munich falls, this will be terrible, because this means the Soviet Union will be split in half. Their eastern Siberian territories will be disconnected from the rest of their empire. We will see, of course, if Leningrad is captured this turn. It was very close to being captured, but Munich was captured, actually, which is, once again, bisecting the Soviet Union into two parts. We will see if the Soviet Union is able to recapture any of the cities that they've lost. We see a renewed Soviet defensive group outside of Munich. We've got a helicopter gunship and a marine. We will see, of course, next episode or next turn if they are able to take it back. But Leningrad is an absolute ruin. This is almost like a scene outside of Enemy at the Gates, if any of you guys are familiar with that movie. Of course, that was a World War II movie that took place outside of Stalingrad, which itself is in modern-day Volgograd, which itself is somewhere around here north of the Caucasus on the Volga. Whoever designed this map decided to be lazy with the Volga River. We don't even see it, so it doesn't exist. And therefore, Stalingrad doesn't exist either, for whatever reason. So, let's go ahead and go back to West Africa. Of course, France has made peace with Venezuela. No more territory has been exchanged between France and Venezuela, luckily for France. But France is itself a more or less a puppet state of Persia. They are surrounded completely by Persia, and they have no room for natural expansion. We see over here that the Shoshone have opted to settle another city in Labrador, where they got access to all the food to supply for citizens is beyond me, especially over here in Labrador, where it's just all tundra. Going to the north, pretty much everything else is status quo here in North America. So let's go back to the war front between England, Persia, and the Soviet Union. Of course, now we are seeing some English infantry making a move potentially on Hamburg. Potentially they might be able to take back some former German-held territory. I'm going to end our turn right above Leningrad and Munich, so we can take a good look at the renewed Persian offensive on Leningrad. It is my guess that Leningrad will fall this turn. Honestly, Persia just has an overwhelming military advantage here, as they control XCOM squads. Leningrad, however, was not taken this turn. Definitely a miracle for the Soviet Union. Perhaps the Soviet Union will catch a break with England, as England is also at war with Persia. We have kind of a united front in that regard. Let's take a look now to see if Munich will be recaptured this turn. It doesn't look like it was. The Soviet Union has actually already ended its turn. Munich still firmly in the hands of Persia, and now the Soviet Union has some disjointed and separated Siberian provinces. Perhaps they will join Germany in the Siberian Exile Club, assuming they are completely annexed by Persia. We will see. It remains to be seen if that will indeed happen. England, very much upset at the fact that they've lost access to the Isles. Of course, the only territories they have are in modern-day Scandinavia and the Baltic region. Let's go ahead and end the turn once again to see exactly what happens between England, Persia, and the Soviet Union. Again, this is a three-front war, as England is also at war with Persia. France has made peace with Germany last turn. Nothing really new to report. Let's see if Persia is able to take Leningrad. If they are, one of the most major cities of the Soviet Union will fall. And look at that, Leningrad has fallen to the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire is now united across the European continent. Very, very bad news for the Soviet Union, as the Persians are literally right outside of the gates of Moscow. Seriously, this is just a disaster for the Soviet Union and for Stalin and for all of my Russian viewers and Russian supporters. Sorry guys, it seems like Persia has basically stomped out any hope of the Soviet Union winning this particular series. However, not all hope is lost. I shouldn't say that right away. Potentially, if everybody gangs up on Persia, we might see a chance at a redemption here, but it doesn't look likely at this point, as Leningrad is now in the hands of Persia, and Persia territory is right outside the gates of Moscow itself. Right outside of this particular wonder. I don't even know what that is. It looks like it's not quite the Kremlin. Perhaps this is like a new world temple of some sort. Let's go now over to North America, where Venezuela still has their city in Greenland, but they haven't really developed it quite yet. Largely the territory of modern day Nunavut is left uncolonized. Disregarding the fact that it has oil, perhaps we will see a renewed interest in this territory. Let's go south now, where, look at this, Houston has been fluctuating in food, and now Houston no longer has food anymore. The Shoshone are no stranger to starving their populations, and there's just an absolute genocide here in Shoshone lands in former Texan territory. As a Texan myself, I can only weep inside as my civilization was destroyed in the first 2 episodes of the series. We see a lot of Venezuelan settlers now heading to the south of South America, heading towards the interesting and tumultuous region of modern-day Tierra del Fuego. I believe in English that means land of fire. It's the southern part of South America, and this is a notorious region in real worlds, or real life, that's the term, for shipping, as shipping that passes below here is subjected to really, really intense storms, and the climate down here is actually completely eroded. Parts of Tierra del Fuego have been exposed to extrasolar radiation due to the fact that the ozone layer there is completely eradicated, which is, pretty terrible. But enough of that. As you guys can see, I have a little bit of an ecological slant, and I don't want to be labeled as a hippie, so let's continue on to the challenge. We see a new Venezuelan city off the coast of Africa. I believe this is like one of those Portuguese colonies in the real life. Maybe it's a former Portuguese colony. Maybe it's part of the Azores. I don't really know. I'm not Portuguese. We do, however, see a massive Shoshone fleet led by these aircraft carriers off of the coast of Europe. They're perhaps heading back home across the Atlantic Ocean. We don't quite know yet. Going back into the conflict with the Soviet Union, however, let's go ahead and end our turn to see how much further the Persians will go, perhaps stopping not even after conquering Moscow itself. So we're going to go and find out. Surprisingly enough, though, despite the fact that they're at war with half of the known world, Germany has managed to take Leonidas across the Soviet Union to outside of Ribe. Very dangerous gambit, as they are at war with, I believe, England and Persia. So we will see if that is such a good idea after all. Of course, Persia is now outside of the gates of Moscow itself. Lenin's tomb is now in danger of being destroyed by hookah smoke and a massive amount of Persian rugs that will blanket the Soviet Union in a massive swath of, I guess, Persian culture. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything witty, so get off my back. Over here in Sverdlovsk, in eastern Russian Siberia, the city itself is under siege and will probably fall next turn. The Soviet Union just hemorrhaging land in this episode, much like the steppe nomads of the medieval ages. Persia is just spreading across Central Asia and Eastern Europe. They will stop at nothing but total domination before deciding to make peace with Stalin. And perhaps I spoke too soon. Perhaps they won't even make peace with Stalin at this point. Really, the future of Europe is up for grabs. We are not really quite sure yet as to what development will transpire in this region. Let's go back over to the gates of Moscow, where Moscow itself is still under siege. Sverdlovsk will fall next turn. And after this turn ends, let's take a quick look at happiness, as it seems to me that owning all of these recently acquired territories is going to put Persia in a bit of a jam for happiness. And it seems to me that Persia is just completely ignoring England for the most part. But I did hear a nuke go off somewhere. I heard a... You still hear it, right? I still hear that sound clip from... Well, I thought that it was like an airship of some sort. I thought there would be some type of... Where is it? I'm not going crazy, right? Okay, whatever. Maybe that's just an ambient sound whenever you go near a city that has some aircraft stationed. I digress. Honestly, at this point, England looks like it's in a better situation or a better position than the Soviet Union. And a lot of you guys were mentioning if Korea would just declare war upon Persia, this might be a lot easier for everybody involved. I'm inclined to agree with you. Let's go to happiness, where Persia is still just swimming in happiness. It's a bit disgusting, actually, considering they can conquer half the world and still remain happy. The Soviet Union is decidedly unhappy, which is unfortunate. And Shoshone are still struggling with happiness as well, as are the Venezuelans. No surprise, however, for the Venezuelans as they decide to, settle cities that are basically useless on one-tile islands. And they still have some unhappiness from conquering French West Africa. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and continue where we left off and see just how far Persia is willing to go into the Soviet motherland. Of course, the motherland calls for Soviet partisans, but at this point, the war is decidedly in Persian favor. One moment as I refresh myself by drinking some water. Contrary to popular belief, talking non-stop for 35, sometimes 40 minutes straight is rather hard on your throat, especially when you don't really have time to breathe either. So, I love to commentate, no joke, but it's challenging sometimes, just to talk non-stop without, catching a break. I love to do it. In fact, I'd hope one day to perhaps... holy shit. Before I continue with what I said, take a look at the peace treaty between Persia and the Soviet Union. This is coming to you guys live right here from the Kremlin. This is an RT, this is, unbiased news, but take a look at this. I mean, holy shit. The Soviet Union has decided to sign peace with Persia in an attempt to retain independence, but at what cost? They've given Vyborg, they've given Vladivostok, they've given Minsk, they've given Kharkov, they've given Stalingrad, they've given Munich, they've given Sverdlovsk, and it seems to me that that's just too much. The Persian Empire is massive. I can't even fit it all on one screen. I mean, look at this. They are everywhere now. Let's take a look at the demographics. Land, they control almost 10 times the, I guess closer to 8 times the average of land territory, and that's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Well, for my Russian subscribers, for Team Russia, guys, I'm so sorry. It looks like the Soviet Union has been reduced to Scandinavia, Arkhangelsk, Moscow, and some assorted grab bag provinces outside of the German exile. The world is now at peace, at least I think it is. Let's go ahead and go to the diplomacy overview and go to global politics. Really, the only people who are at war are the insignificant ones. Shoshone and England are still at war. But besides that, for the most part, It's just England, Shoshone, and Persia. Of course, Persia is still at war with England. We are going to see now next turn if Persia will be able to push into English territory. But this is just such bad news for the Soviet Union. This is really, really bad. Perhaps the Soviet Union will never be able to recover from this. I certainly think they won't be able to. And now Persia is the unchallenged hegemon of basically the entire old world. Perhaps at this point it's only a matter of time before they decide to strike into North America and South America, and perhaps even finish off their friends, the Koreans, once they are no longer useful. I keep thinking Copenhagen's been nuked, but it turns out I am just continuously wrong with that. It's just that Copenhagen has always been a relatively small city. Really, at this point, because Persia borders all of the English territory, I have a feeling that England will be the next civilization that's completely wiped off the map. Well, I spoke too soon. Outside of Essen, Essen is now falling because Persia has decided to send some units to take that city. I think it's actually due in part to the fact that they have jet fighters and bombers bombarding the city. Let's go over here to North America. Nothing really new has transpired. Perhaps in South America, we have a brand new city, still in modern-day Chile, San Cristobal. Perhaps Argentina will be colonized at some point by Venezuela, but at this point it is unlikely. And if you guys have been paying attention in modern contemporary events, I guess you could say, in the news, I know I talk a lot about history, but modern-day events are also just as interesting. There is a massive problem currently in Venezuela. Venezuela has effectively closed its border with Colombia because there is a problem with food smuggling. And this is going to sound ridiculous, but smuggling food from Venezuela right now is more profitable than smuggling drugs into other countries, notably from Latin American countries that produce cocaine, perhaps into America. It's more profitable at this moment to actually smuggle food, and I'll get into that in a second. Because right now Korea has declared war on the Soviet Union, and the Shoshone have also declared war on the Soviet Union. We will perhaps see a Shoshone offensive into Soviet Scandinavia, while Korea tag teams the Soviet Union and perhaps gang rapes them over here in Siberia. We will see. But getting back to what I was talking about with Venezuela, it's a serious problem because Venezuela has... It's kind of like a mixture between what we consider capitalist and what we consider to be, completely socialist system of governance. They have a current regime in place that dictates the prices of foods and dairy and basically all sorts of consumer items and things like that. And basically what this means is that something as simple as milk is fixed as a price by the Venezuelan government, and many times the Venezuelan government will set the price much lower than what you would find in neighboring countries, for instance Colombia or Brazil, and this basically results in a massive problem of food smuggling. Like Venezuelan people will buy massive quantities of cheaper items in their state sanctioned stores where they can buy milk for 1/10 the price that you can buy it in Colombia. They'll, fill their cars with Venezuelan milk, Venezuelan oil, Venezuelan food goods, go across the border into Colombia and make a killing of a profit. And this has gotten to the point where it's gotten so serious that Venezuela is actually imprisoning people who are smuggling food into Colombia and smuggling food into Brazil and other neighboring countries. Of course, the French province of Guyane is nearby, as are other, Caribbean nations just across the sea border with Venezuela. It's a serious problem, actually. And it's gotten so serious that, like I said earlier, that Colombia has closed off their border with Venezuela. So enough of the modern day mumbo-jumbo. It seems to me that Persia will capture all three territories of Nottingham, Ribe, and Copenhagen next turn. I hope I'm wrong, as I'm also kind of rooting for England They are most definitely the underdog at this point. Of course, Korea is now going to be sending its men westwards into eastern Siberia to try to take some land, while the Shoshone are also ready to strike into Soviet Scandinavia, where they have a huge fleet in the northern Atlantic Ocean. Of course, they are passing through the Northern Atlantic Gap, which itself was a very important region in World War II and the Cold War, respectively. Very strategic location. Northwest of England, southeast of Iceland. America has made peace with Germany for the first time in thousands of years, and Persia is about to conquer Ribe and potentially Copenhagen and Nottingham. They were able to take Nottingham, and they have made peace with England after taking Nottingham by force. So now, I mean, take a look at the Persian Empire. It's massive. It spreads across everywhere. We've got my alarm going off. And we've got a revolution in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union has decided to embrace communism in 2043. This is a little bit unhistorical, but that's okay. In other events, Venezuela has declared war on Washington. I have no idea how they plan on getting up there, as they might be able to move troops through the Panama Canal if they are allied with Panama City, but at this point nobody is. So access to the Panama Canal is strictly off limits. Now we're seeing Soviet Union at war with basically the entire known world. And in the next episode, we will see if Persia is able to hold on to its massive intercontinental territory. Of course, they gained almost 10 cities this episode alone, so if they are able to continue at this rate, this series won't last very long, as the entire world will turn red. But as the adage goes, perhaps it is indeed better to be red than dead. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. As always, before we sign off, I will be going over the demographics for you guys to take a look, as has been the example in the past almost 12 episodes. Persia has been in the lead of every single, parameter. We can take a look to see how much more they are over the average. Really, it's just startling how much land they have and how many units they have. Let's go now over to the cultural overview and go to cultural victory. We take a look at happiness. Somehow conquering half of the Soviet Union has actually increased the happiness of Persia. It seems that, erasing vast swaths of land and, basically paving it over with Persian rugs has really made the entire Persian Empire a lot happier. We're kicking out the pierogi, we're kicking out the vodka, we're replacing it with hookah, we're replacing it with hashish, and we're replacing it with those damned Persian rugs, and the world is happy. And by the world, I mean the Persian Ummah. Let's go now to England, who has a revolutionary wave, but they're still happy. It's a bit funny, even in the midst of a revolution, the English people are still happy, as they are, basically about to die in a massive genocide once Persia paves over their cities with Persian rugs, but they're still happy. And you know what? Happiness is all that matters, guys. If you can take one thing out of this video, happiness is the most important thing. And you know what? That means Persia's going to win, because Persia is the happiest empire. They just got smiles everywhere while they're bombing and committing genocides, but they're really happy people. And that's really what matters, guys. That is really what matters. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the next episode.